We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent.
Hi, Parth. You're looking well.
You.
Jinx, double Jinx, Yomi Soda. Hi. We have a film podcast.
We do. I saw you so recently.
I know, we're both tired from the same humidity. We were
Yes.
like, we didn't work that hard today. What could it be? Why are we so tired?
Trent is shooting some little bits and bobs, some B-roll footage involving mannequins.
Trying to finish off
in
my
New Brunswick.
thesis. And Parth mentioned the mannequins. Yeah, so we had to carry it's sort of not ideal circumstances, as Parth noticed, but like nude female components of mannequins like across the street, and then like stuff a bunch of them into a car, and then just to bring them back into a school building and then reassemble them. But that was sort of a humorous image I thought I'd paint for the audience. Some people gave us some looks like we were up to no good.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
all
in
I'll
a way
say.
we weren't, but we shot for truly not that long, maybe like 4 hours, 3 hours.
It was like 2 hours of camera shooting.
Yeah,
and like
there was like
4 hours of our bodies setting stuff up.
or slash breaking them down and sending them out and stuff.
But needless to say, like the average American is expected to work 12 hours a day. And granted, hopefully that's indoors, but
I don't think the average American is expected to work 12 hours a day, Trent. I think
probably
it's 8.
Yeah. But needless to say, the humidity takes it out of you. And as
does.
anyone's dad would say, it's not the heat, it's
the humidity that gets you.
So what have you been eating?
Well, I think maybe you should go, because unless you've consumed something most recently, I'm sure I know what you've eaten most recently.
No, I just had something else, brother.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I treated Parth and friend of the show, Jackson Clark. He's been a guest, a five-timers club. I treated them to some burgers and shakes. But then I had another meal, and that was my parents made a nice cut of steak, and then like some like orzo situation. Maybe it's not exactly it. And then I had a corn on the cob and some applesauce. And it was like hearty and delicious after the day we had.
Trent,
What
one
about
of
you?
the items on your list sort of overlaps with what I will eat. When I came home, my dad had big plans to grill today and marinated a bunch of chicken. And so we grilled that, and I popped some chunks of those into my mouth before we started recording, because Viraj and his friends are in the basement, or were in the basement playing. And so they've come up to eat the food. And during this interim, while they're eating, I've decided to regain control of the basement to record this intro.
You said they're playing like they're like 6, like they're like playing with blocks, but they're like 16, so they're just like fucking watching TV, right?
Well, they're playing Wii Sports, so.
Oh, well, that's pretty wholesome.
Yeah. But I had some chicken that my dad grilled, but my dad also grilled some corn. So I have that to look forward to.
Little corn on the cob never hurt anyone.
Never
Corn is
did.
on the short list of like vegetables that taste good.
I like vegetables. My dad also grilled onions and peppers, which those also taste good.
Yeah, they sure do. Well, you know what I think might like sound good?
As opposed to tasting good?
Well, on this podcast, we try to appeal to as many senses as possible.
Well, what would sound good?
Like, how's the opening jingle sound?
Wait, isn't that, it goes kind of like... Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture.
This week, our film is Jeff Nichols' The Bikeriders, and our guest was the production designer Chad Keith, who was super cool, super gracious.
Yeah, Chad Keith was super cool. Very nice guy. Very quick to say yes to us, which was very nice of him. But yeah, we get into his relationship with Jeff Nichols. He talks about how he got involved with his first film, Take Shelter, how that sort of continued on to The Bikeriders. The Bikeriders, a movie I really enjoyed. And an interview with Chad Keith that I also really enjoyed. Trent, you were there. Did you enjoy it like I did, or were you sort of more like so-so on it?
No, Parth, I'm all in. I'm all in on the Chad Keith Part 1, The Bikeriders, Jeff Nichols interview.
Yeah.
I've put pretty much everything I've got into this. I saw the movie. I showed up. I wrote a few questions beforehand. I put my best foot forward, and I'm proud. I'm proud of what we're about to present. I don't know if you can say the same, but
Oh, okay, that's cool. Well, I mean, you were there, so you could say whether I should be proud or not.
But this is like only just the beginning in the way that it's a 2-part interview.
Yes.
So you're going to have to come back next Sunday if that's your bag, if you want to hear the rest. If you like what you hear this time, come back next week.
Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, should we just cue the interview? Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Chad Keith. He's the production designer behind such films as Begin Again, Boy Erase, Scream, and our film for today, Jeff Nichols' The Bikeriders. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So just to start off, what was your relationship with film like at a young age?
Oh, man. Being able to get an allowance and lived in a small town that I could ride my bike to this tiny video store and stare at the walls of VHS tapes and figure out like how many I could get in my hand on my bike to ride back with what my money would allow. So, everything. I think, I had 2 older brothers, so I was kind of something was on the TV that was sort of shocking and different would get my attention, like classic horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and the early Friday the 13th, and those are kind of things that your parents don't really know what you're watching, and you just go for it.
So when in your life did you start to gravitate towards or take an interest in production design in particular?
Well, in college, I moved to Wilmington, where I still currently live, and knew that they sort of did a film. There were film studios there, and they had a film school, and I knew that I was into photography and where could I take that, and because I sort of started out with wanting to be involved in camera and cinematography, and then in college I was able to get like pretty good internships with different departments on TV shows, and I could like learn sort of what each department was doing, and kind of notice what the art department did and how they brought everything that was in front of the camera to life to give something to shoot. And that became like more of a interest to me than all of the techiness of what I saw the camera guys having to go through. So I had one of my first jobs ever was like an internship on the show Dawson's Creek, and I was able to kind of learn what different departments did, and then I would meet different people that were doing independent films and, you know, be, you know, kind of head up their art department with, you know, I think the first film I did, maybe I had like a $200 budget, and I would have to, you know, go return stuff to buy stuff for the next day. And it was fun, you know, I love that. Yeah, that's kind of my early beginnings. And then I kept doing smaller projects around North Carolina, and eventually sort of word of mouth got around in North Carolina. And then the North Carolina School of Arts is also in North Carolina, where, you know, great Southern directors are, like, you know, that's where Jeff Nichols went, and David Gordon Green, and this other director that I was able to link up with, Ramin Barani. So I got called to do this film that Ramin did called Goodbye Solo, and that got out into the world and did really well. You know, it won Venice the year it came out. And then from there, it was just kind of like word of mouth popping around of, you know, this kind of new budding designer that was, I guess, you know, that I was liked, I think.
You started a working relationship with Jeff Nichols, I believe, on Take Shelter.
Yeah, correct.
So
yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about how you met him, what that was like when you guys first started working together?
Yeah, it was just kind of you know, connection between different producers that the project was brought to my attention that way. And I definitely knew of Shotgun Stories, you know, because that was like an amazing film that had been out when I was starting to sort of learn what independent film was and who was making things, you know. So I totally knew about Shotgun Stories. And then when I realized that it was kind of the same director, you know, it was definitely pretty exciting. And it was sort of, yeah, the biggest level of film I had done at the time, and there were certainly challenges to figure out, but collectively with Jeff and Adam Stone, who also does all his films, we figured it out like we always do as the movies grow.
So obviously you were invited back for the Bikeriders, and was wondering how that came to pass, and if you could talk about Jeff Nichols' directing style a little bit as you've worked with him over like a decade.
For sure, yeah. Jeff knew that he wanted to do something with this book, Bikeriders, you know, the photos from Dandelion. So it took him a while just to sort of figure out like how to make it into a story, and like how he wanted to make the photography come to life into a story, you know. So working with him on the other earlier films like Loving and Midnight Special, you know, he was sort of always hinting at this elusive biker book, you know, that sort of we were all wondering about. And then it came to life. But yeah, like working with Jeff and his style is you know, it's a good trio we have, like him and the DP and me. Just like you start to just get each other and like sort of learn from your strong points and weak points from the previous film before to grow to the next one, you know. And I that's one thing I admire about Jeff, is that like he's always willing to you know, challenge himself for the next level of film, you know, and then it challenges everybody that works with him at the same time. And so it's a good like growing and learning sort of little family we have together.
you were talking about this book that the movie is based on, and obviously that's kind of like a research document for you in terms of building the look of the movie. But could you talk a little bit about if there were any other sources that you used, if there, like, what kind of work you did to sort of build out the look?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's you. Yeah, you have the photography book, and that's kind of like a beginning of an idea, right? And so then we just digged into the time period of, it's set in the 60s, so we go back to, say when you go to interiors, you try to sort of think about how old those would be, and so possibly some of them built in the 40s and 50s. And then sort of you just start to comb and, look at photography and expand on references from sort of different eras of time and sort of different sections of the country, and sort of piece the puzzle together to, nail the exact vibe and look that we thought that we wanted for Bikeriders.
Do you have any existing movies that were in conversation for the look between you or you personally, or between you and the director?
Like, I mean, it's like, we you could sort of do that all day, but not directly, because it was, we just always want to go out to make our own film. So, it wasn't, yeah, you might sort of reference like certain bike shots in Easy Rider, or, periods of time around there. But no, for the most part, it's just like he really wanted to nail the world from these photos. So we just spent a lot of time, like, in our heads figuring out, what it would take to make a 360 of a photo come to life in these people's worlds. And he had all these tapes from Jodie Comer's character, of conversations with Danny Lyons about their lifestyle and like where they hung out and the kind of people they hung out and who they were friends with. And so that was kind of a lot of sort of, a little backstory for us, for him to develop the characters so that we would kind of know like what type of environments they would be in.
Obviously, this movie is like a period piece, kind
Right.
of. And if you could sort of talk about what the challenges were with having to make something that is period accurate in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenges of this period film. Let's see. So, we shot in Cincinnati, which was a great place to set up. A lot of the story was sort of set in Chicago, but it sort of could have been anywhere in this sort of area of the country. And so, we started just trying to feel what was right for exteriors to kind of catch like an older Chicago vibe, and being able to like easily control it at the same time. So Cincinnati has some great surrounding areas around it where, maybe smaller towns that have not completely remodeled yet, and with a lot of properties sort of sitting boarded up and available to sell. And so we spent some time just like thinking about all the points of the story and where things need to be. And by some research, from some knowledge from Danny Lyon, we were able to find where this sort of real bar was that they hung out in Chicago, and do a little tracking down to find out that it was at an intersection. And, so we kind of started there, finding like non the most non-updated sort of intersections that we could scout. And then we would, start knocking on doors and seeing if the places would work. And just sort of gathering, through lots and lots and lots of scouting, like, just the best choices that we would set up our own little world at. And I would, so the hero bar was, like, completely, we just, wiped the whole thing out from what it was turned into like a little bitty church at one point, and it could kind of had been sitting there. And we just knew sitting at this intersection, it might just be like this golden opportunity to see how it would be to sort of rip it apart and put it in our bar. And that's what we did, and it worked.
We were wondering how long the entire shoot was, and if it was all shot on location, or if any of it was shot like on a sound stage.
Yeah, it was, we probably had about 10 weeks prep, and it was about a 9-week shoot. And it was all location work. There wasn't anything on sound stages. Like, we were at locations that we redid from scratch. That was essentially our own studio. But no, we were all on location.
Great. I wanted to just sort of get into some specific scenes
Yeah.
of the movie. So in the opening like section, can you talk about making the bar where the Bikeriders are and where Benny and Kathy meet for the first time?
That's the one that was, it was a complete overhaul, and just checking out, it was just so fun to jump into that period of bar life and just trying to get sort of every detail right. So, the old metal tiles on the ceiling, and the floor, like the floor pattern we chose. And we actually got the bar itself, the physical bar, from, like, we tracked it down. It was in Detroit, in an old bar that had been, shut down and abandoned for like 50 years. So we got a true period correct bar from that time period. And then we just all the details of, like, the cigarette machine and the jukebox and the all the liquor bottles. Like, we made sure that, like, everything was 100% like authentic and nothing was duplicated. We didn't make any fake labels. Like, those were all like original liquor bottles from the 50s that we tracked down. And, like, even down to, like, the music rights we had in the jukebox, we got clearance to show these, Rolling Stone albums and Supreme albums, and all this great music. And then we what's the other thing about that? Yeah, no, I mean, so just like so much like authentic detail we wanted to put into it that was real and that we didn't have to create that was fake, which could have been fine also, but it's just more fun to challenge yourself and get the real things. Like, my decorator who I work with a lot, Adam Willis, like, he spent so much time with, the neon, just the neon signage back then was, it's so rare to find a lot of that anymore. We found like one of the few in existence in the country, which is in the main front of the bar, like this, one of the very first ever Budweiser neon signs made. and unbroken, untouched, like all original, and is in mint condition. It's beautiful, and I have to say that I kind of got over a long time ago, like taking a souvenir from the film, but that neon is in my house. It's great.
Awesome.
Pivoting to a more of a quiet set, Kathy's house where like the interviews are being conducted. If you could talk about what sort of your production goals were of that location.
Yeah, Kathy's house was tricky, like finding, because you also see a lot of the exterior of the whole street with sort of surrounding houses all around her. So we kind of first had to start with the exterior to see what was and what wasn't remodeled, on the entire street, because the entire street was a set. Before we kind of start knocking on doors to go inside, we have to light the street outside. So we were fortunate in finding this house that was sort of at a point where they were about to start this huge, modern overhaul. And we were able to stop them before they started any work. And we were just like, kind of like, stop what you're doing. We love the street. Can we use your house? We, want to make it sort of period authentic. And, this is kind of a perfect skeleton for us. And they were game to let us do our film there, and stop for a little bit before they did their like huge sort of remodel. And then that street around it, all the houses around it, we either had to paint or change windows, change doors, sort of make everything period correct, like on the entire street. Sort of every house on the street, we probably had to do like a handful of things to each place to make it correct as well.
So do you need to get permission from like every house on the street?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then you have to work out a deal with them, and you'll be like, we want to paint your house, we want to change your porch, your windows are weird, can you lose your air conditioner for a couple of weeks, all kinds of stuff.
Jesus.
And presumably, do you have to reset everything back to the way it was after?
Yeah, of course. Unless, sometimes unless you like kind of better the place for them, of course, like if the house has got like a new paint job and they like what we did, then they're happy leaving it. But, I'd say 80% of the time people like they want to walk back to their house exactly how it was,
What an interview, Trent.
Yeah, I mean, just getting started, it felt like.
That's true.
Just heating up.
Just heat Michael Manning up.
Isn't there like Heat 2? Something like that?
Heat 2, I think, is coming out either next year or the year after is the plan.
Who's all's in it? Is Val there? Is Rob?
No,
Al?
it's
Robert,
like
Robert De Niro's dead. No, it's not.
Yeah, I think it's more of a prequel. I mean, the book is a prequel sequel, but it's more of a prequel, and I'm pretty sure they're trying to get Adam Driver for De Niro, for young De Niro.
Oh, so they're casting young people and not doing stupid de-aging?
Yes, and Austin Butler, I think, is really trying for Pacino. I think maybe is like a thing that's happening. I don't know that I love that, but I mean, I like Austin. But wait, an Austin Butler connection again. An actor
I like Austin Butler too. I don't know if I see that necessarily.
I might be wrong about that. I think he is circling that movie, but I don't know if it's for that role. But I think it is.
Austin Butler delivers a lot of serious glances throughout the Bikeriders, and he's qualified.
Yeah,
and
Al Pacino has a crazy voice in Heat, and it seems like Austin Butler's pretty up to the challenge so far as creating a voice for a character,
and then getting a little bit stuck in it after the fact. Which is
so maybe we'll have Pacino.
A fun sensation.
We'll have Pacino Butler, and like, really, what else do you need in your life? Except you might want. you know, like you might want a part two
Part
of
two
an
of
interview
the
in your
Chad
life.
Keith interview with the part two with the production designer with the Bikeriders with Chad Keith, the production designer. Part two.
Yeah, you might want
Is that
that
what you were going to say?
You just might want that next week on Sunday, because here at Craft Services, we release an episode every Sunday.
It's like going to church, folks. No need to see God. Just check in with Parth and I.
Yep.
So yeah, we have an Instagram and Twitter and Twitter, Craft Services Podcasts. And you can listen to our show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Pandora, wherever you get podcasts.
Trent,
really.
don't be so enthusiastic when delivering the final words of this show, but I do kind of want to let the audience off the hook.
Let's let them.
Should we let them off the hook?
Okay. I'll stop talking.
Okay. Well,
No.
it's almost like we're doing a funny bit where we don't stop talking, but see you next week, guys.
Bye.